Hello YouTube, and welcome back to my other top 5 video game systems of all time. So, as some of you guys might remember, I did my top 5 game systems of all time around 3-4 weeks ago, and on that video I said, hey, leave a comment if you guys want to see my other top 5 game systems of all time, and I'll let you guys know what they are. And you guys commented, you guys let me know that you wanted to see this, and here I am with my 5 other top 5 favorite game consoles. So essentially 10 through 6. So yeah though, so let's get into it. Number 10 is the original Xbox. So just like last time, I'm just going to hold up my favorite game for the system. And yeah, so number 10 is the original Xbox. So if you would have asked me like a year ago if the original Xbox would be one of my favorite game systems of all time, I would have told you no, I would have laughed at you, but last summer I just got really into collecting for the Xbox. And I don't know why, ever since then I went from owning around 5 games for the thing to, I think I'm close to like 35, 40, something like that now. And the reason why is just because it's such a quirky and weird system. Like, it's completely different from the Microsoft of today. Like, the OG Xbox is so weird. There's so many IPs that Microsoft just tried just to try out, and it's really cool. And the best thing about the OG Xbox is nobody cares about this system. And by nobody cares, I mean just people don't want the games for it. So most of the games, this is the most expensive OG Xbox game I own. It's the most I've paid for a game, and it was 30 bucks. So, like, a bulk of my collection has only costed me $5. And it's just really satisfying to be able to buy games that I want, again, for super cheap like that. I think the only other system that I can really do that with is the PS2 at this point, because the PS2 just has so many games, you know. But the OG Xbox is really satisfying though, because it's like, a lot of these games are like just weird and obscure too, like Phantom Dust, just stuff nobody ever talks about. And so it's just become so much fun to collect for, and I just really have started to enjoy it. So it's crazy to me that the OG Xbox is my 10th favorite video game system. So number 9 is Sony PSP. So the PSP is a weird system because growing up as an 11-year-old child when the PSP first came out, because they first came out in 2006, actually no, I was 9 when the PSP came out, because these things came out in 2005 or something like that. So I always wanted one because the graphics were so incredible. But I ended up with a Nintendo DS, and I'm very glad that I did, because I absolutely love the Nintendo DS. But then around 5 years after I got my DS, something like that, I finally got a PSP, and I loved it. I love the Sony PSP. It's such a great game. I'm holding up the wrong game. This is Persona 3 Portable. This isn't actually my favorite PSP game. My favorite PSP game is Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. I just grabbed this one by accident. But this is still a great game though. So the PSP is a really great system, or handheld, whatever you want to call it. And the reason why is because it has a ton of these RPGs. I love my RPGs, and I love them on handhelds. There's just something about RPGs, in my opinion, that just work really well on handheld consoles. You just get to bring them and take them wherever you go. You don't have to worry about not having a TV to hook them up to or anything, and they just work so great on the PSP. And there's so many of them. There's a lot of really good ones from big series like Persona. In fact, the entire Persona series, Persona 1 through 3, is on the PSP. And then of course 4 came out on PS Vita. And then there's just obscure stuff like Grim Grimoire and Blade Dancer, stuff like that. Just games that never get brought up nowadays. So I love the PSP because it has a great, very underrated JRPG lineup. And then it also has some really fun puzzle games like Gunpei. Gunpei is one of my favorite puzzle games, such an underrated game. And it's super cheap too. The PSP is almost in the same boat as the OG Xbox, where it's pretty cheap to collect for still. Again, the RPGs on the thing are starting to go up, so if you are a collector of PSP games, I'd say get the RPGs now. But if you're not, or you're just not interested in those games, everything else is basically super cheap, so that's definitely a plus. So number 8 is definitely an interesting one. It's the PlayStation 4. So I've had my PS4 since November of 2014. So basically enough launch year. And I have just always really liked it. I'm sorry guys, my air conditioner, not my heater, my air conditioner is going off. And I'm sorry about that, but I have, ever since I got the thing, I've just been in like with it, I suppose. Like, the PlayStation 4 is the weirdest system to me because I really enjoy all the games that I've played on it and everything, but I just don't know about collecting for the thing. Like, I think I have 35 games for it, and that's actually not that many games because the Switch I have like 40 games for right now. So I have more Switch games than I do PS4 games, which is just bonkers because, again, I like the PS4 more than I like the Switch. But there's just something weird about collecting for the PS4 in my eyes because it's just like, in my opinion, the budget games aren't there. Like, the budget games on the PS4 aren't really that great or interesting. The ones on Switch are interesting. They're not that great, but they're interesting at least. The ones on PS4 are just like, not there. And then the main Sony games are really like the big draw, and as I said before, I don't really care for those ones. But then you end up with games like this one, Persona 5, where it's just a fantastic JRPG. It's everything that I wanted it to be, and then some, and I loved every second of it. I played through this game in the course of 2 weeks. I literally put 8 hours a day for 14 days into this game just to beat it because I could not stop playing it. It was so great, and I am kind of looking forward to Persona 5R, but that's another video for another time. But yeah, so the PS4 is a weird system because I really like it, but I don't think I'll ever really get heavily into collecting for it. But still though. So next up, number 7 is the Nintendo 3DS with Kid Icarus Uprising as my favorite game. So my actual, I guess technically speaking, favorite game on the 3DS is Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D. It's also like my second favorite game of all time. But the thing with that is that's like an enhanced port. I didn't know, so whatever. I just went with Kid Icarus Uprising because this is a good second best game. And yeah, so the 3DS, this is the first system that I actually owned when it was brand new and I could actually go out and buy games for because I had a job and everything. And I really love the 3DS. I'm really nostalgic behind it and everything. But in my opinion, the thing that holds the 3DS back is the same thing that holds the PS4 back. And that's that the main AAA games that are there are fantastic and great, but it's just everything else isn't really there, okay? So all of the third-party games just aren't as interesting as the little brother counterpart, the Nintendo DS. I really love the Nintendo DS, but I love the 3DS, I just don't love it as much because coming back to the library and everything, it's just not as great as the Nintendo DS is, if that makes sense. Like, the DS has way more games than the 3DS, but granted, the bulk of those games are shovelware, but some of those shovelware games will surprise you because a few of them are pretty good. The 3DS doesn't have the shovelware, which means you're missing those few ones that are actually pretty good. So that's why it's number 7. I do really love this system. I am really nostalgic behind it. I've had one since pretty much the year it came out, and I've loved it ever since, but sadly it just barely misses the top 5. And in at number 6, perhaps the most controversial one, the Nintendo 64. So some of you guys who are long-time subscribers, like 2-3 years ago subscribers, may remember at one point in time, I was going for a complete Nintendo 64 set, and I was at one point only around 50 games shy. I was at 240 of 296, and I just stopped going for it, and I've sold a decent amount of those games. I think I've sold 100 of them, and the reason why is because I'm just not... I really love the Nintendo 64. I'm really nostalgic behind it. Again, it was one of those systems that I had as a little kid, like when I was 5 or 6 years old, and I played up until I got older, like 12, and because of that, like, I have a deep nostalgic connection, but I just like, my problem with the N64 is a bulk of the library of games. So I would say 2/3 of the library of games for the N64 are not filler games. You know, they're your action-adventure games. Actually, no, I would say 1/3 of the games on N64. So we're just round up and say 300 of the N64 has 300 games. Of those 300, 100 of them are stuff like Banjo-Kazooie, Star Fox 64, Ocarina of Time, you know, great games, okay? Just really great games that you should play. But then those other 200 are just completely skippable. Like, they're a bunch of racing games, a bunch of really bad sports games that have not aged well, and a bunch of really bad just games like Mario, Superman 64, Castlevania, even though I like Castlevania. Stuff like that, you know, just games that haven't aged well. And because of that, when I realized that, I just kind of fell out of collecting for the N64, and I've just never gotten back into the N64, like, after that happened. Like, I don't know if I'm just burnt out on the system, but I haven't come back and played through an N64 game since Mario 64 last year. And it's coming on a year since I played the N64, and because of that, like, I just feel like it can't go into the top 5, but I really want it in there, so it's number 6, close enough, you know. But yeah, so that was my other top 5 favorite game systems of all time, 5 through 6, I suppose. If you like this video, like it down below, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And have a wonderful day, YouTube, or night, whenever you're watching this. And peace!